Hi, it's Ileana here at Awakening Cosmic Reality Show, and we have Penny Bradley today with us. Hi, Penny.
Hello, Elena.
It's nice to see you back. It's been a while.
It's really good to see you back. I'm glad you're doing enough better to be back with us.
Yeah, well, I had somebody steal my work, and it was a copyright issue that I was dealing with, getting it off the internet, because all my presentations about the secret space programs, Mars and stuff, it was all put in a blog without my permission. I never gave permission to do that. And this person called me a LARPer and a bunch of other things that were not appropriate. And it was done all in French, and my work was put in French. I did not approve any of that. I did not give my consent. So I told them to take it off, and I just basically put everything, all my videos on my website in storage for a while, so other people wouldn't do the same stuff, because I was finding my work being ripped off quite a bit. So that's why I went silent. Nobody deleted my videos. Nobody took my, YouTube did not delete me. My website wasn't deleted. It was just put in storage on purpose for a while, so my work wouldn't be abused. And now it's back. And I wanted to talk to you about that cybernetics factory that you destroyed, and also ask you about Aries Prime on Mars, how that base was like being on their base colony, how that was like for you, and discuss Nacht Waffen.
You said it right.
I'm trying to pronounce it correctly.
You said it right.
Oh. Yeah. I'm trying to get the accent ready for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So can you describe to us, well, you are a secret space program asset, and you're still in the programs, and you have alters who are in there. So can you describe that experience, how you got to know about the cybernetics lab, the factory, and how it was destroyed and why?
Okay. Because I'm an asset, I have alters, plural, many. My understanding was that I had approximately 2,200 alters. Though one of the two that I know works with James Rink. Our unit, and I believe Rochelle was also part of this group. So there was a group of us who were going to the cyborg factory for upgrades of our enhancements. Okay, there's a fine line between enhanced human and cyborg. I think it has to do with how much of your actual brain is still in the body. And this was a Kruger unit that did missions. Kruger is a mercenary company in space. They sell their services to other factions and to ETs to fight their wars for them. So we're basically soldiers for hire. And this particular squad are basically ground thumpers. So that's my super soldier alter. And that's how I know James Rink, and part of how Rochelle remembers me. I don't know who the other people in the unit are. But this was in early September 2016, I believe. And I was already aware of my alter that was on Mars, but she had already been sent home. So she was no longer active. So for me to wake up as this person, first of all, it was a real shock, because I didn't know that alter existed. So I'm waking up inside an altar I didn't know exist. I didn't know exactly where we were. And I was immediately hit with the visual of all these rows and rows and rows of robot bodies and the humans on hooks ringing the room. So this was basically the assembly area. And little old me, here and now Earth Penny, freaked out. And that altar doesn't have a firewall on her psi abilities. And I put out an energy pulse that destroyed the lab, destroyed the factory, destroyed us because they had to give us new avatar bodies afterwards. I was piggybacking the same altar in the new avatar body when James Rink gave me a hard time over it. I got a dressing down over it. And the altar had a really hard time convincing him that it wasn't actually her. But along the way, someone had changed the process of me bleeding over. So I cannot just take over an altar again. Ever since then, when I've woke up in them, I've been piggybacking, where I can see through their eyes, hear what they hear, know what they're doing, but I can't control it. So whoever is in charge of me as an asset reconfigured my ability to do that. So I am no longer able to do what I did that day.
And when you're in this, when you're the altar, were you in a cyborg body?
It didn't feel like a cyborg body. It felt like a mostly human body, although there was an exoskeleton that was surgically implanted, and one of my arms, I believe the left, which is weird because I'm left-handed, at least in this altar. The left from the elbow down was gone and replaced with a weapon. And we were supposed to be getting some sort of upgrades to the mechanicals.
So inside your head, what kind of enhancements do you have? What kind of mechanicals was that?
In that altar,
Yes.
there were lots of chips. Each one did a different thing. In my pilot and navigator altars, I have a chip that connects me to the ship. In this case, the chip connects me to James because he's the unit leader, and it gives us, even though we're a squad, it makes us act more like a single individual. And he's the one in control. And I would assume that he's also chipped into his commander.
Yeah, that makes sense because the Neuralink implants that I had allowed me to communicate with my team groups. Like we worked in 6 to 12 groups while in the cybernetics labs on Mars and the different bases. So we had synthetic telepathy with each other, and we could even communicate with others in other groups. So it allows for that mind-to-mind communication.
I think it's more secure than regular telepathy too, that way, that it's harder for outsiders to hack in because of my genetic modifications, I am telepathic. So having a chip to be telepathic is kind of redundant unless it's a secure line.
Yeah, so it would be the programming in these chips or Neuralink implants would be encrypted.
Yeah.
Just like, for example, we're using Zoom right now to record this, and it's encrypted. So we have a secure line in a secure chat room that's private. So nobody can join us. It's encrypted and it's closed. So we're in a closed circuit Zoom session. So I would assume these microchips and Neuralink implants had a closed circuit connection that was encrypted as well.
I know I also had chips to operate the mechanics of the exoskeleton, because this one, we were larger than normal humans. It wasn't quite the robot bodies that they show with the human inside. It was smaller, but not a lot. So we were in between the two sizes.
Okay.
So, and if you got killed in battle, the exoskeleton was programmed to walk you back to base so that you could be at least accounted for.
Yeah, and then your body's put into their, if they want to reanimate you, your body's put back into their regeneration tank or the holographic medical pod, and you're revived, rejuvenated, fixed, and you're back, ready to go back out there, right?
Well, Kruger doesn't use your natural body, so they don't use the mented regeneration tanks. They use the holographic med beds.
Okay, yeah.
So if they want to keep you, yeah, they'll do that. In a lot of situations, they consider it more cost effective to let the body die and then re-up you in a new body.
Yeah, so they literally put your soul or your core memories in the new body, correct?
What I've noticed, because I've been awake during the transfer process, is me, Penny, physical body, is in a tank full of a yellow gel, and the clone body or avatar is also in a tank full of yellow gel, and there's some sort of a technologist who is running the transfer process, and from the tank it looks like it's a old school computer bank, and there are wires. I mean, these are like this big around, the wires in between the tank and the computer. So I don't know if this is really old tech or if it really requires that much energy. But I have been in my physical body seeing the limp clone, and then felt dizzy, and then I was in the clone body seeing this body limp. And I know when the clone body dies, I'm back in mine. So I don't know I don't know how it works exactly, but I know from experience that as soon as the clone body is dead, I'm back in mine. So I think it's what the New Age people call a silver cord. That you are tied to your body. But what they do is they transfer you over complete. It's your entire soul, mind, consciousness, everything. And then they activate the altar that they want. And sometimes they don't get the right one. So all I can figure is they're sloppy, or because I was activated to remember the one altar, that my system is trying to reintegrate. So I'm waking up times that they're not happy about me waking up, and I'm waking up in places where I don't know where I am or what I'm doing, and I have to just stop and, okay, where am I? What am I supposed to be doing? You know, who am I? What's my name here? And it's very disconcerting.
Mm.
And it's happening more and more often. It's been, all of this started with the activation in 2013. So I've had a couple of people over the years tell me that they had remote viewed the explosion at the plant because they heard me talk about it. And I didn't know exactly where it was. I didn't have my bearings. I didn't, I knew it was on Mars. That's all I knew. And that our unit was there for upgrades. And James was really mad because he had really looked forward to whatever these upgrades were, and the new avatar bodies didn't have them. So we were still going to have to go back. But the plant had been destroyed. And I've had, 3 people tell me that not only could they remote view that the place had been destroyed, but they also found it on Google Mars, and that there's a big black spot where it used to be. So apparently when I blew it, I took out the power plant too. Poof. So I'm sure lots and lots of people died in that.
Well, they have on Mars a lot of these, what I call them, cybernetic labs connected to the bases themselves. And yeah, when I had my hypnosis regression sessions done, there was a lot of human bodies hanging on hooks, like you said. And I put that in my presentations, and then the cyborg bodies ready for the soul implantation. Because for me, I was mostly taken physically up there. It wasn't me sleeping and my soul just taken from my body. My physical body is taken. Then they put me out and they transfer my soul into another avatar body that's also humanoid, but it sees the cyborg bodies being ready for soul implantation, and it sees the human bodies literally hanging on the hooks, like meat suits.
When I'm taken, I'd say at least 90% of the time it's completely physical, and I'm put into a tank and transferred over, and they hold my body in stasis.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm physically returned to within a few minutes of when they took me in the first place.
Yeah.
And I hear all these people talking about other timelines. I hear all these people talking about that it's done in your sleep and it's a soul transfer, and that basically your body is just lying there dead. And I'm like, that doesn't mesh with what happened to me. So in fact, yesterday in the group, day before yesterday in the group, I had a man have a temper tantrum because he was swearing that none of this was happening in this reality, that it was all happening in another timeline. So it didn't matter what happened to us because it wasn't this timeline. Well, that's not true. It's all this timeline. We're bilocated. We're not switched to another timeline. Timelines have a frequency, and if you go physically, you can't function because you're not that frequency. You can only function in your own frequency, and that is this timeline. We're all that frequency.
Yeah,
So,
we're on this timeline, except where we are in the facilities, they're more advanced than what is on Earth. That's the only difference.
well, it's still our timeline. It's still in real time on Mars or another world in the same timeline that we're currently living on Earth. It's the same people bilocated. And during the time that I'm sleeping in my bed, I'm taken and I go through this whole thing, and then I'm brought back, and then I'm sleeping. It's not, I experience it very linearly, one after the other, and it's all me, and I'm not going anywhere in another timeline. I do go into other dimensions because I do hyperspace jumps as my job as a navigator. But that's, you know, and I do other dimensions when I'm lucid dreaming. But that's part of why SSP took me, is because I do that.
Yes. And this has been happening to you for a very long time. It's not recently that this started, so it's been going on for years.
Well, I remember being taken when I was 4, and I'm 64 now, so it's been a long time.
Mm-hmm. So you've had a chance to figure out how this works and why it works, why they take you.
Well, I've been particularly racking my memory, trying to figure out how it works, because there are so many theories out there. And it's, okay, this makes sense, that doesn't, that's irrational. I mean, seriously, if we were going into timeline bubbles, like some folks are saying, why would the CIA invest their resources in that? Why would any government agency on Earth invest their time, money, assets on another timeline?
They wouldn't, because this is happening in this timeline.
Exactly. So that was problem number 1, was because everybody keeps telling me, oh, it's happening in another timeline, so we don't have to worry about it. And I'm like, why would the CIA do that? Because I know the CIA took me, I know the CIA did my mind fracture, I know that they did my programming, and I know they control who takes me when, because every so often they will pick me up for a mission, and on the way back they will injure me on purpose. And they tell me why. My shoulder injury last summer, they told me that was because I had reintegrated a alter that was a navigator. Okay, they told me flat out, do not reintegrate any more navigator alters, period. And I'm like, it wasn't my idea to reintegrate her. She was upset about something someone else said and decided to reintegrate as her form of suicide. So I'm stuck already dealing with her suicide ideation. And the CIA decides to break my shoulder to punish me for having done it. And I'm like, oh my God. You know?
Like we don't have much control what happens to us when we're in these programs and these missions, because there's certain programming, like situational programming going on. And we're not really in control of our physical bodies or where our souls end up. And what we come back with, often the memories are scrambled, and we have to do hypnosis or lucid dreaming to put the pieces back together. And some of it is screen memories, and it's hard to remember who you had the missions with or why you had the missions, where, when, why, who.
I have a chip inside my ear canal on my right ear, and my doctor has seen it. We talked about it, and I asked him if he would remove it, and he says, I don't think that's a good idea. So I have talked to my doctor about the mind fracture and what I'm doing to reintegrate, and that I don't need his SSRIs because I'm working on it, and told him that I'd reintegrated 30 alters, and that if he knew of a pill that would reintegrate alters, I would consider taking it. And he turned a chalky white and has not brought it back up. So I'm sure he has been contacted by whoever is in charge of me, because he's been sort of half-assed listening for a while. I'm trying to not cuss, but it's still coming out. I'm sorry.
Well, this is all tough. It's not easy to deal with, and it's not a situation or situations that you tell normal people about, because they're liable to think that we're nuts and crazy.
Well, I've been seeing this doctor since 1994, and he watched me go through endocrine shutdown. He watched me go through arsenic poisoning because my husband at the time was poisoning me for life insurance money. He watched me go through recovery from that. He's watched me go through being reactivated by the NSA. And he's watched me. He hasn't been on Facebook to see any of my videos, but that doesn't mean he hasn't looked me up. I don't, he may know what I'm talking about, but I haven't given him any details. So I have to take Lou into the appointments with me because his nurse is so rude to me whenever Lou isn't there. So anyway, he's retiring in June. So I'm going to have to train a new doctor.
Yeah, that's going to be, how do you make somebody understand that your life is not so simple, and that it's this worldly, yet everybody considers it otherworldly. But for you and me, it's normal because it's part of our lives, that we've gone on missions off planet, we've been on Mars, we've been part of different secret space program groups, and been in our own bodies on these missions, been in different bodies, clones, cyborgs, avatars, you name it, it's been done and practiced. And
Pretty much.
Yeah, so it's hard for a regular normie, like normal person who doesn't understand these things, to process this information and not think that you're just extremely weird or crazy, or you should be on antidepressants, SSRIs, or something else because you're just out of it. Your behavior is out of this world, not normal. To normals, they just see it like so beyond normal Earth stuff.
Well, I'm to the point where even my doctor is on a need to know. I did not tell my doctor nor the surgeon how I got injured. I told them that I woke up with it because real world here now, that's the truth. I was taken on a CIA mission, and when it was completed, the 3 men who had picked me up and were taking me back just stood there and calmly said, "We have tried to kill you in the past. We don't know why, but we do understand we are unable to kill you. But we know we can make you hurt. You are not to reintegrate any more navigator alters." And 2 of them held my body still, while the 3rd broke my shoulder. I had surgery for this in October. For those who will be watching this later on, that's October 2019. It's 2 months later, and I still can't raise my arm above this. But my doctor thinks I'm doing pretty well. And I start physical therapy just after the 1st of the year. So I still have to have help dressing. I can't put on shirts by myself. I did shower and wash my hair today by myself. Yay!
Congrats.
Baby steps.
Yeah, well, sometimes we come back with injuries, like when we're reintegrated back the soul into the body. You can be sore, you could feel so much physical pain and have bruises, and that's from your missions, because sometimes you come back punished for something because you disagreed, didn't agree to do whatever mission they wanted you to do as they wanted you to do something, you saved somebody that you shouldn't, you interfered with something, and you come back with physical hurt because they punished you for it.
Mm-hmm. But my big fear is that because the agents said that they knew they could make me hurt, are they going to do this to me again?
It's a possibility.
And since I told the doctor I just woke up with it, are they going to blame Lou?
Yeah.
Repetitive injuries in an older woman living with an older man.
Well, I believe you. Lou didn't do it.
No.
So I believe you.
Lou's really good to me. If anything, he puts up with too much from me.
He's not the type of person to do something like that, break your shoulder. And you're not the type of person to go and break your own shoulder. That's not easy to do. So
No, it's not. There was no rational explanation I could give them that would make any kind of sense. So I just told them, well, I woke up with it. Because to a rational, real world person, that's what it would look like.
yeah, and that's the best thing you can do, to tell them that you woke up like that, because there's nothing else you could say that would rationally make sense about how this happened. So you did the right thing by saying what you said, because there's nothing else you could say that would make sense.
When they looked at my MRI, it was like, how the hell did this happen? And I'm just saying, well, I woke up with it. They all, that look that you've got is exactly the look I got from them. They didn't even look at Lou. They was like, okay.
Something weird happened here. What else can
Something
you say?
really weird happened here, yes. And
Yeah.
I can't tell them because they wouldn't believe me anyway. And what do you say, you know?
You can't say
Yes, I
anything.
have a secret double life where I work for the CIA and have no right to tell them no.
You can't. Well, I've never told anybody outside of the people that I are friends who are SSPS. It's my parents know that I've never told anybody else. Oh yeah, sometimes I was part of secret space program missions off Earth or on Earth, and I know several of these program groups that I did work for. I did a 60-year and back through time travel. How do you explain that? I'm not even 60, I'm 34, yet I had all the unexplained medical health issues that of a 60-year-old. So I'm still working to fix all of that mess and improve my health one bit at a time. So, and it's time travel. Sometimes it's time travel. That's how they could make it into a 60 and back, even if you're not 60. With time dilation, with time travel, they can do it. And it's not a future. It's running along this current timeline. In this timeline.
Well, I can draw you a picture.
No, I understand what we're discussing. I don't need a picture. It's time dilation, and they could do it that way. So it may seem like maybe a couple of days here, but it's 60 years on Mars, and it's same timeline. It's just they can expand and warp time to change time itself. Still same timeline. You're not off into the far-flung future. You're in this time, but it's accelerated. So you do a 16 back, and then they bring you back.
You were in a different faction than I was.
Yes.
And I'm not sure exactly how they operate, so I'll take your word for it. Nacht Waffen. Nacht Waffen is they prefer you in your natural body. They prefer you as human as possible. They understand that some Earth humans are descended from ancient hybrids, and those are okay. They just don't like the modern hybrids. The Nordics / Anunnaki / tall whites, whatever you want to call those beings, have been interbreeding with Earth humans every few generations for millennia, probably as long as there have been us. And that's part of why women continue to have problems in childbirth, because in a wild environment, within 5 generations, all the women that couldn't survive childbirth would have already been dead, and that would have been taken out of the gene pool. So we know for certain that there have been rehybridization all along. There are so many humans on Earth that are hybrid now. There are, 70 ET races that have hybridized us at this point. So the Germans were not concerned about old hybrids because everybody is one. That was their attitude. But the new hybrids, there tended to be problems with the kids. My kids on Earth have congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and that seems to be an effect of the modification that they did to make me a navigator. I've talked to other navigators, some of whom also have adrenal issues. As I got older, I'm in full adrenal shutdown now. I have to take medication to replace that to stay alive. I did mention earlier I'm in full adrenal, full endocrine shutdown. So my thyroid doesn't work, my adrenals don't work, and I'm now diabetic. So they call that metabolic syndrome, the combination. And that, folks, is why I'm fat, because I never was before this happened. So, but it seems to be a long-term effect of the modification that made hyperspace drive possible. So they probably thought that it was worth it and never considered what would happen to the individuals. And so my kids have this issue, and knowing now that they have this issue and what it's related to, I understand why the Germans in space did not want me to be a part of their gene pool, because that would have put that particular set of defects into their gene pool. And they didn't need that, and I understand that.
And what was your experience like living on Aries Prime? Because you mentioned that's on Mars, one of the base colonies.
That was the first German base colony. And it was a military base first, and developed a colony around it. And that was part of the reason for the Mars War, was it wasn't a suitable place for a colony. And it was the best place in the territory that the Draco controlled, because Mars had been split up between the sentient races that are there. There are the Draco, there are the Mars mantids, the Mars raptors, the Mars native humans, and the tall whites have an underground city in the southern hemisphere. And between them, they had cut the planet up into sections, and everybody had their own territory. Everybody knew whose territory it was, and they had had peace for thousands of years. And then the Germans showed up, and Aries Prima, you came in through a jump gate, and you were greeted at, it looked like the place where you sign in at a hotel. And the sign said, Willkommen ins Aries Prima, in German. And you were assigned to barracks for me, with the people I came with. There were 12 of us in a barrack. We each had our own bunk, and we were expected to be presentable at all times. And because as 9-year-olds, we were technically enlisted into the Martian militia, which was called Marische Heimscheld. we had set hours that we were supposed to keep. The lights would come on at a certain time. You were supposed to get up, get dressed, make your way to shula, behave, learn your lessons. The teacher would slap you on the hand if you did it wrong, usually with a ruler, so it didn't hurt his hand. And after shula, you would work for several hours in the hydroponic farms and harvesting and taking out dead leaves and, you know, whatever. As we got older, we had more things like making sure there were nutrients in the water and keeping things like that. And I remember there being some sort of a surface level project where we tried to grow crops on the surface. And the local varmints ate it all. Mars has an ecology, or what's left of one. It used to be a planet alive just like Earth. And when the air was sucked away, the critters that could survive with less air are what's left. Less air, less water. So it's mostly invertebrates and cold-blooded animals. There are a few birds and mammals left, but not many. And they're mostly small because they don't require as much food. But there's lots of reptiles, there's lots of insects, there's lots of you know, worms. I mean, half of the life on Earth is worms or bacteria. Well, if you start counting bacteria. There's not as much bacterial life on Mars as there is on Earth. But there's large sections of Mars that show radiation damage too.
So is Aries prime underground?
Yes. I can't remember exactly, but I suspect it's under Olympus Mons. And we would, when I was a pilot, I had a chip behind my ear connecting me to ship's computer, and we would let the base know we were coming in, and they would open the force field that was over the landing area. So you could come in, and then they would close it behind you, and you'd park and come in and go down an elevator to wherever your barracks was. And you would check in with the commander. The Shula was at one of the lower levels, and most of the kids in Shula were children of military and their wives, and they were mostly German. And they had people who were German mixed. It wasn't just solid Germans in the German categories. I know of several people on Earth who were high officers in the German ranks that were a quarter German, and the rest is Scottish or Irish or English, or in one case the man was Mexican and German, because there's Mexican areas that were colonized by Germans. You know, ethnic, what is it they call it? An ethnic conclave. So there would be areas in all of Latin America where there are these German enclaves, and they would occasionally intermarry with the locals. And their children would be included as Germans because they were raised in that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So the Germans' issue with Americans is not racial. It's because of the way the Americans treated the German veterans at the end of World War II. And I really don't want to talk about that.
No, we won't
That will
get into that.
just get me in trouble.
Yeah, we're not gonna get into the whole war thing or after the war. It definitely is not. It's part of history, and it's a long history. 2 wars, a lot of weird things.
Oh, it's more than 2 wars. It goes back about 3,000 years.
Yeah, well, outside of the World War I and II with Germany, yeah, it does go back to decades and centuries.
It goes back a way, way, way long way. And that's what I'm writing my book about. Is I started off, I was just going to give a brief intro into why, what the background was for the SSP. And I was remembering what I was taught in Schule about German history and started checking into some of that, especially the part of where the Order of the Black Sun came from. And I started finding all sorts of things that Schule had talked about, but Earth School did not. And at this point, I've verified probably 90% of what I was taught in Schule. So it's been a wild ride the last 8 months doing this. And so the focus of my book shifted from my personal stories to why did the Germans go into space with my personal stories woven in. So I'm hoping it's going to be insightful and not just paint a target on me. Yeah.
You put it out there and see how it does. Let it ride the wave. Let people just buy and read. Yeah,
that's what the game plan is. But I had reached a point where I had to look into this stuff. And so I've taken 8 months to look into this stuff. And now I know what I'm writing. Before it was just kind of a ramble. So.
Yeah, same with me. I'm writing my book, and there's a lot of background stuff that's going in there, not just my experiences, because things are interconnected. So I have to do my research. I have to make sure I back it up with some factoids and stuff. So it's not just personal memoirs. It has to have some historical background. I'm focusing on the U.S. Secret Space Program, U.S. Moon and U.S. Mars. So that has a lot of Project Horizon research and Werner von Braun's involvement with all of that stuff, because he had an involvement. So also background research into that. I am a bit about the German stuff too, but my focus is a bit of everything. I'm not focusing so minutely on history so much, but just some background research. And because my book is going to be like 300, 400 pages long for sure. And I'm only not even halfway done with it. How about you?
I stopped writing at about 25 pages and started doing research. And Lou pointed out to me that all of the prior German researchers are going to be going over mine with a fine-tooth comb. So I had to have all my ducks in a row.
Yeah, of course.
So anytime you come out and you're saying, well, these people had a point, They may have complete, well, not may have, they did do a lot of horrible things along the way. A lot of horrible things, not just what they're infamous for. But when you start saying, well, a lot of horrible things were done to them too, that's when you have to start having your ducks in a row.
Yeah, for sure.
So
back it up.
Yeah, you have to back it up. You have to have your ducks in a row. You have to have all of the documentation that you can come up with, because you're going to get blasted for that.
Oh, for sure, for sure. On Aries Prime, did they have the replicating technology to replicate food, or was it just cooked?
We had a bunch of weird stuff. We had food that was cooked. We grew salad greens. We had pig cells that we grew as a pork meat that we had. The military had it once a week, and the civilians had it twice a month. And it was considered to be a protein and iron supplement. We had a 3D printing thing that was recycled wastes. And as Tomas has described it, they didn't always do a good job of recycling. We also had prepackaged food that you just added water and heated it in the microwave. And some of that was decent. The macaroni and cheese was really good. It was like baked Italian macaroni and cheese, not like the stuff in a box in America. But it was really good. If you put the exact amount of water and did exactly the right time in the microwave, it came out really good. We had occasionally fruit from other worlds. There was a fruit that looked like a banana but tasted like a strawberry. It was excellent. We were not allowed coffee. It was verboten. Forbidden. Chocolate was a very, very rare treat. We had some hot drink that had a stimulant in it, but it wasn't caffeine. So I don't know where they got that. They had us on a lot of enhancement, production enhancement drugs. So once I was actually military instead of a student, we had a lot of drugs to enhance performance. And that required we do regen. Every week was what they aimed for, but the drugs destroyed your liver. And you know, if you're having to be regenerated once a week, that it's major destruction. It's something you should not be taking.
And the regeneration, was that in the regeneration tanks or the med beds?
Regeneration tanks. That's the technology that the Germans have. They don't have the med beds.
Okay.
That's a story. When the Germans first went into space, they were in the Hanabu. And the Hanabu, the engines give off a lot of radiation. a lot of it. When they were testing the bell, it gave off a radiation that killed every living thing within a certain radius. Well, you're on a ship with this thing. And they didn't have enough shielding. So the crews, that the men that were running them were dying these horrible radiation deaths. And the mantids took pity on them. They said, you know, these guys are really, really motivated to get out in space, that they're willing to do this, to do it. You know, let's give them this, that they can survive at least. And the Germans in space would not have survived otherwise, because the technology that they were using was so dangerous. So that's the only healing technology that they have. And they're leased from the Mantid Empire. I have no idea personally what they're paying for it with. But at the same time, this technology will only work on your natural body, because you go in, you come out, and it can't fix mental problems. So if your mind is gone, you're dead anyway, or might as well be. If you're catatonic when you go in, you'll be catatonic when you come out. But it only works with your natural person. So if you put a clone in there, it will kick out the asset and bring up the clone's mind at the age appropriate for the body, which means that that particular body will not be able to be, will not be able to have another asset transferred into it. So there's no point in having clones if that's your only healing tech.
Yeah, because the planetary corporations on the Mars bases that I've been on, they have the regeneration tanks, and it does heal mind fracture, trauma, the mental issues, it does heal that. So it's probably at different technology rates, different regeneration tanks. Planetary corporations also have the holographic medical pods and Meditech units and other things. So I guess technology varies in how it functions, even with regeneration tanks. It's different depending on the group you're in.
These factions are generally not sharing technology. I don't know what kind of deals that Kruger and Monarch have made, that they're able to get help from planetary corporations. You know, because I know it was a planetary corporation's factory that the unit I was in with James, we were going to a planetary corporation's factory to get our upgrades. So I don't know what kind of deal that they made behind the scenes to do that.
But they do make deals and they get favors in trade and stuff. So Planetary Corporation has a lot of advanced technology and they trade it for things. If there's something that they want, that it's perhaps a little bit more advanced than what they have, or resources, they'll trade you for it. They'll build you a factory, they'll trade you technology, and they'll program it within a certain set of parameters. Not the highest stuff, not the bestest, but just a bit better than the previous stuff was. So they have a lot of control over it. Then there's also the Time Corporation, which deals with doling out the time travel tech to some of these groups, like to planetary corporations. So it's very much dependent on resources, which group has more and more access to advanced stuff.
Well, my time in Nacht Waffen, we generally ignored everybody else. There were times that we would need the mercenary companies. And there were times that the German system for dealing with cyborgs would be overwhelmed. And so we would sell prisoners of war to planetary corporations. But generally, we just did our own thing out there. And we were trying to be as independent as possible. After all, the whole point of leaving Earth was to get away from those people.
Mm-hmm.
So, they do consider themselves free Germans out there, as in free from the bankers. And that's how they describe it, is free from the bankers.
Mm-hmm.
And they've set up, using time travel, they've set up colonies that are now scattered through almost a third of the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way. And some of them are 400 years old now.
The colonies?
The colonies, because they went back in time and rescued people from wars and plagues and took them to these new worlds because their more primitive technology skills were exactly what was needed to tame a new planet.
Mm-hmm.
They knew how to farm, they knew how to blacksmith, they were not required to have a power source. They weren't used to electricity. They thought they had died and gone to Valhalla, so they were accepting of whatever new technology was given to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like, what else are you gonna do? You're given a chance to have a new planet, but you have to go back to the basics.
Yeah, that's the approach they took, was they went back to the basics. Das Bundes is what they call the culture. Das Bundes would set up a city based on a European city, and it would have everything in the core of the city that the European city had. So that would be stadiums and a Rathaus, that's city government. And there would usually be some sort of a town square that had a big clock that every so many hours it would go through all the mechanical stuff. And it would look exactly like a German-style European city, including with the curved pointy roofs. And that would be what all of these colonists would cluster around and become the core of their particular civilization. And I'd say probably 10 of these worlds are considered by the Germans to be independent nations now. It was never their, because they're a tribal people, they expected each colony to become its own nation, over time. And they set them up with people of basically the same tribal background. And they would give enough of others to give them some sort of genetic diversity. And over time, some of these, well, most of these colonies are over 1 billion population. So we're talking at least 1,000 colonies, and maybe 50 of them are not to 1 billion yet. So we're talking a lot of people out there. And that was why when the Germans in Antarctica set up their contract with the Americans, they wanted 150,000 Americans every year. And they were hoping those Americans would become colonists to help with the genetic diversity. So the CIA shot us up with Draco DNA, which made us unsuitable. The Germans were pissed.
Yeah, it's a way to put a thorn in your side.
Yeah, here you think you're working out a deal that's good for everybody because, you know, you think you're doing good, and find out that not only has the CIA completely mind fractured these people and trained them to actually betray you, but they've also shot them up with Draco DNA under the excuse that it made it where we could live around the Draco where they can't. You know, and it made us genetically unstable. So
Yeah.
you don't want genetically unstable as part of your gene pool.
Yeah, Draco are stubborn. They're set in their ways. They're warmongers. They're extremely smart. So
Warmongers?
well, some Draco are warmongers, aren't they? Warrior class and just
my experience with the Draco is, as long as you're paying your taxes to them, they'll leave you alone. It's when you say F you and stop paying your taxes that they go in and say, look guys, we really need for you to do this. And they'll go through a year or two of trying to negotiate to get this resolved, and then they will stomp you. So they give you every chance in the world from their point of view. And if you still refuse to take care of business, then they will make an example out of you so that the worlds around you don't pull the same thing.
well, what about all those myths and rumors that they just invade worlds and conquer galaxies and systems? Because that's what people have an idea of reptilians and Draco, that they do that without any kind of respect or anything for anybody else, that they just conquer worlds. That's the general mythos about Draco and reptilians.
I know that's the general mythos, but it's not what I experienced of them.
Okay.
I know there are several ongoing wars in the galaxy, and that they are involved in a war with the Lyrans, what's left of them, and that that's been going on for a very long time, and that there has been war with the Orions also for a very long time, but that the Draco Empire itself has been stable for millions of years. And yeah, there's occasionally a princess that will get a bug up her butt that she'd make a better queen, and she'll try to do a coup. But it's still the same 4 families that are running the empire, even if it's like that. The empire itself is this blob in space that takes up about a third of the Sagittarius arm. And the Germans are from where Earth is, and that way a third. So they've tolerated the Germans taking over worlds, even inside, outside their empire, as long as the Germans pay their taxes for the parts that are in the empire, they're not a problem.
Okay, so that sort of helps to differentiate between the mythos of the warmongering, that they're not warmongers. As long as you pay your dues, do your taxes, they leave you alone.
Pretty much. Now, the problem on Earth is that we have representatives of all sides of all of these conflicts, and they're all giving their 2 cents worth. And so humans are sitting here and they're listening to the ones that look like us and getting mad at the ones that don't. And because our religions paint demons as reptilians, it's really easy to fall into the trap of these are all devils. And they're not. They're 3D physical beings just like we are. They just operate at a higher energy level. And their energy field is huge and powerful. And we normal humans from Earth are not hardwired to survive it. So just stay out of their energy field.
Yeah, because they have a lot of energy, and if you meet them, you can pass out or wet your pants, so to speak.
Well, I've seen people start having seizures and throwing up and poo themselves and just fall over dead, jerking, because the energy was more than their personal brain could handle.
Yeah, and the auric field as well.
I don't have that response because I was modified to be able to live around them. But I've watched humans that weren't, what happened to them. So I don't say go out and try to make friends with them if you're not modified, because that's not in your best interest.
Yeah, and there's different sorts and types of reptilian races, so they're not all the same.
There are probably 1,000 different sentient, intelligent reptilian races within 30 light years of Earth.
And there's also human reptilian hybrids. So that adds on to 1,000 and just makes it more interesting.
Well, the Naga, I believe, came from Cassiopeia, so it's one of the reptilian races out there, and they are basically a hybrid between humans and snakes. There's 8 categories of dragons?
Yeah.
So there's snakes, there's turtles, there's lizards, there's dinosaur types, there's hybrids, chimeras, all kinds out there.
Oh, yeah.
But I know the Draco, the Alpha Draco in particular, have this huge energy field that will kill a normal human.
Yeah, I've never seen a Draco, so I've seen other reptilians around me and kidnap me and do experiments on me, but I've never seen a Draco.
Oh, I've seen more than one Draco. They're interesting how they go about things. It's like they don't quite know what to do with me because I'm not going to die in their presence, so they don't just bully me. And because of the time I spent in Nacht Waffen, I'm not easily intimidated. So they watch me for a little while, then they pull the full intimacy telepathy, and then we just start talking, and it's like dealing with a salesman almost. You can't really trust everything they say because it's from their point of view and to support what they see as their best interest. So as long as you understand it's to support what they see as their best interest, within that context, they're completely honest. Because to be anything else is to be dishonorable.
Yeah.
And they value honor above anything. So if you are being deliberately dishonest, you have no honor. And not only that, but you've brought shame on the empire. So, yeah. So they do have their own set of ethics, but you have to understand it's within the context of what is in their best interest.
Mm-hmm. Because they're looking out for themselves. They're opportunistic.
Well, so are humans.
That's true. Yeah. I mean,
all sentient life forms that I have had interaction with have a self-interest, and they all look out for it. It's part of being self-aware. You want to make sure you have what you need before anything else.
That's true. Number one.
So that's all races are like that.
Yeah, it's just degree how much more or less of it. The ego and the narcissism.
We all have an ego.
Yes.
Every single one of us.
Yeah, yeah.
We all have the id that wants pleasure. We all have the super ego telling us what's right and wrong. And Draco are no different.
Mm-hmm. They're just much bigger than humans.
Yeah, they're bigger. We come to about their kneecaps.
So it's not every day you meet a Draco because they aren't just flitting around on the street ready for us to meet them. They're quite secretive and they go out of their way for us not to meet them.
Well, they know that spending too much time around us will kill us, and that's not their intention. If they really wanted to kill us, there wouldn't be any of us. All they would have to do is show up and make sure that we were in their field long enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been a pleasure getting this insight and talking to you about all of this interesting stuff that we've never really delved into before. So this is like, to me, it's new material. So, because we've never discussed things in such a narrowed scope, in such detail. Yeah. So I think it's been fantastic to do that and get a bit more insight about you and what you've gone through in the SSP and with meeting extraterrestrials.
Since I've been doing interviews, so I did my first interview in September 2016, but since then I've had contact from several ET races in the here and now. I'm not sure if it was 3D physical or if it was I was pulled into an astral realm. But I've had Draco, I've had Shuriken, who are the warriors. I've had Jahami, tall whites, a race that's from Canis Minora, and they're every bit as big as the Draco are. But when they're on all fours, they look like wolves, and when they stand up, they look like Anubis, and they come in the same colors as wolves. I've met orcs, where prior to that time, they were all in another dimension, and I would go visit their village. Now they've been making the trip to see me. And I've gotten to where I don't so much look at their outsides, what they look like, as I feel for their energy signature. And the tall whites and the Jahami are the ones I mistrust the most. Of course, the Jahami did try to kill me in 2017. No, 2018. It was 2018 that the Jahami tried to kill me. So, it's been difficult dealing with them since, because they still show up and tell me to do things, and I basically tell them no on a regular basis. I don't want to work with them, but they keep showing up anyway.
Yeah, gotta keep telling them no.
Well, I woke up one day inside their truth machine, and they were peeling off my altars, recording the memories, destroying the altar. And after the second one, Nacht Waffen showed up and rescued me. Now, I understand since then that this was a redial, that they had discovered that I had been destroyed as a soul, which meant that I could no longer be their navigator. And they had gone back to rescue me. And they'd gotten there after the second one had been destroyed. And they lost a ship in the process, which still confuses me as to why they thought I was worth losing a ship. So, but that was my worst experience with the Jahami, was that. And
are they humanoid looking? The Jahami?
Yes. Yeah, they're what history calls Anunnaki. They're 7 to 9 feet tall and look like albino Vikings, and they abuse Ormus. So if they're using the silver-based Ormus, they turn blue, blue-gray, and if they're using the copper-based Ormus, they turn green. But they start off white, and I mean white like this board, not white like people. Their eyes range from gold into the blues and greens. They don't have brown eyes. They do have long curly hair and beards. And the women are vampiric.
to like soul energy vampires or teeth vampires? Or both?
Both.
Okay. Interesting, because some of the SSP programs actually genetically engineer making vampires, both energy and with the teeth and all that stuff. So it's like there are races like that.
The Shahami have had so many wars in so short a period of time compared to their lifespans that they've now got 80% of their male population is sterile. So they are a race that's dying. And the tall whites are their basically blue collar class.
Mm-hmm.
And it was their elites who tried to kill me, and their blue collar class had been talking to me for, I guess, about 2 years now. And I'll hear them in my head, and I'm like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to do this. And they'll stick around. And last year I was at a conference and 2 of them showed up, and they told Lou, the guy over here, that they had intel that I was in danger and that's why they were there. And the 2 individuals that were there were actually nice guys, but they both spent time talking to me separately. But they were in disguise. They looked almost human. I think Lou and I were the only ones that knew they weren't. And I was summoned to Area 54 last September. And they were mad because Lou came with me. So apparently they were up to no good if they didn't want me to have my partner with me. So, I mean, why else would you not want the woman's partner with her?
Well, generally you don't go alone to these conferences because you never know what can happen there.
Well, the thing in September, I had a shredded shoulder. I couldn't dress by myself. You know, let's get real.
Yeah, so you needed somebody to help you.
I had to have someone with me who could help me dress, help me bathe. You know, when they tore up my shoulder, they left me pretty much one-armed and helpless. And it's been a really humbling experience for me. So anybody that's really arrogant, spend some time not being able to use the hand that you're handed in. Because I'm left-handed and they broke my left shoulder.
It's beyond explanation generally, and the punishments sometimes are designed to hurt you where it counts the most. Like that's why they broke your shoulder, because that's your writing arm.
Mm-hmm.
Just as
well, I was still able to type, but I was in so much pain that I pretty much stopped doing interviews because I couldn't control my mood. And I'll be honest, when I'm in a bad mood, sometimes I'm a bitch. And I did not want to be that person.
Or so, you destroy electronics.
Yeah, I destroy lots of things whenever I'm in that frame of mind. So, didn't want to be that person.
Yeah, so, none of us do.
So I had gotten to where I was not interacting much online. I wasn't doing interviews. I spent a lot of time working on a family tree. I had been locked out of my family tree on Ancestry.com because I didn't have the money they wanted me to spend on it. And so I started a new one on a free site. And I was specifically looking for Scythian ancestry. And I have a list of family lines, I guess you would call them, that are Scythian ancestry. And I've gone through 3 great-grandparents out of the 8, and all 3 of them have Scythian ancestry.
Mm.
So I was looking for this because the Scythian nobility were descended from the original Nephilim, who were the children of the Jahami and crossbred with humans. Whenever that modern humans had first been created by whatever race did it. But the Nephilim were the first generation of those giants, and they had the reputation of being man-eaters, but at the same time they had the reputation of being, how is it the Bible put it, men of renown. So, but that's what I was looking for, because I have friends who are part of Dragon Court, and I was looking to see if I was one of these people. So, according to Dragon Court's rules, I do not qualify because I'm Rh positive. So, if anybody's worried about it, I'm not.
All those secret societies.
Yeah, well, I was curious, and I was in too much pain to interact with actual humans. So this was my solution. So almost 6,000 family members, ancestors on my tree later.
Is that going into the book?
Parts of it, not my personal part of it so much. Maybe by that time I'll have more information about all 8 great-grandparents, and at that point I can make a statement. But at this point I don't have enough of it done. But it's amazing, if you're descended from the Scythians, you can go back almost 3,000 BC with records. And if you're not, there are no records for you.
I don't even look into those things. For me, it's just like, I know which country I was born in, which languages I spoke, which countries I lived in. It's enough for me. And
Yeah, well, my mom didn't want me to look. She got really mad when I did the tree on Ancestry. It turned out that my grandparents on both sides had reinvented themselves when they moved to California. So completely, they had just walked away, taken what they wanted, left everything else, and came to California, and they were new people. They still had the same names, but they were new people. And so they had completely broken contact with the rest of the family. So I've been using, there are paper trails for everybody. In America, we have census every 10 years. So I've been doing a lot of paper trails, going back and finding people. And it's amazing what there's paper trails for. And it's also amazing that people didn't even have two names from the fall of the Roman Empire until 1100, whenever, I think it was Henry I of England, declared that for taxation, you had to have two names, a first and last name, so that they could identify you separately from someone the next block over who had the same name. So everybody had to pick a family name. Yep. So all of those people, you know, example, Otto of von Saxon. He wasn't really called that. He would be Otto, son of, even though he was king. So yeah, that was the way it was. It was you, and all the names, official names, were in Latin up until I think it was 1400. All your official names were in Church Latin. And it was these records, I will boggle your mind trying to read them. I mean, I've never studied Latin, and I'm getting to where, oh yeah, you know, so-and-so, Filios, so-and-so, that's a name. So, yeah. Now, does that name match up with this name in English? That's the big question. And was this the only man with the English name that could have described? So those are the big questions when you're doing genealogy. So I did genealogy before I was on Facebook. I was on Ancestry for 7 years, and people were paying me to do their trees because I was that good at figuring out, is this person that Latin name? So, yeah. And so I came to Facebook, started doing exposure of political corruption, and then the NSA agent found me and activated me. And at that point, it took me about 3 years to sort through memories enough to talk. And somebody, presumably the CIA, started shooting at me. And by the third time I was shot, Lou and I decided I should go public. And that's what I do now. So doing the tree was more like getting back to my personal roots.
Yeah. Oh, it's been a pleasure to get these insights and to understand you better, where you come from, what you do, why you disclose. So thank you so much for this. And this is Penny Bradley, and she's public. She's been around for several years, done many interviews, been in conferences. So she is a public speaker, and so am I. I don't do conferences. So Penny Bradley, thank you so much, Penny.
Thank you.
Have a good day.